Lazard looks in to get his sign. Here's the windup, the pitch. There's a long drive to deep right. It's out of here. A home run by Norman Cash. And the Tigers have tied the game at 1-1 here in the sixth.
In December 1959, the Cleveland Indians traded Norm Cash to the Detroit Tigers. What did they get in return? A man named Steve Demeter. He played only 4 more games in the Major League before disappearing from professional baseball forever. For the next 15 years, they watched from afar as the man they had traded away won batting championships, played in the World Series, and became one of the most beloved players in Detroit history. Norman Dalton Cash was born on November 10, 1933, in Justisburg, Texas. He grew up in Post, a nearby town that was not much bigger. And here is the first thing about Norm Cash that almost nobody knows. He did not play baseball as a child. Not organized baseball, not Little League, not anything. It was only when he got to Sul Ross State Teachers College that some teammates put together a town squad and asked him to join. Cash picked up a bat for the first time and discovered he was good at it immediately, naturally, the way some people are simply built for something without ever knowing it until the moment arrives. Then came 2 years of military service, followed by a brief and unremarkable debut with the Chicago White Sox. He appeared in fewer than 100 games across 2 seasons, hitting just 4 home runs. He was hitless in 4 pinch-hitting appearances in the World Series. The White Sox did not see a future for him. They traded him to Cleveland. Cleveland did not see a future for him either. General manager Frank Lane sent Cash to Detroit in exchange for a third baseman named Steve Demeter, a man who would play only 4 more games in the major leagues before disappearing from professional baseball entirely. 4 games. That is what Cleveland received for Norm Cash. Both Chicago and Cleveland would spend the next 15 years watching from a distance as the man they gave away became one of the most beloved players in Detroit history.
You live life on the field as well as off the field. And they attested that by Norm Cash.
He would put his uniform on, and he'd jump up and he'd click his heels and say, "Let's go, boys, and get him." And you would say, "Well, if he can wake up, we can too."
Before the 1961 season began, nobody was talking about Norm Cash. He had hit 18 home runs the year before. He was a first baseman on a good team behind a Hall of Fame outfielder named Al Kaline, and that was how most people in baseball thought of him. Then the season started. By the end of May, Cash was hitting above 350 with 10 home runs. Sports writers at the Detroit News started calling his output the Cash Register, a running column tracking what he produced at the plate each week. By June, the number had climbed higher. On June 11th, he stepped in against Washington's Joe McClain and sent a baseball to a place no Detroit Tiger had ever sent one before. The ball cleared the right field roof of Tiger Stadium, sailed over the upper deck, and landed on Trumbull Avenue outside the ballpark. When the season ended, the final numbers were extraordinary. A batting average of 361, the highest of any player in the American League across the entire decade of the 1960s. 41 home runs, 132 runs batted in, a career best on-base percentage of 487, which no player has surpassed since. He led the league in hits with 193. To put that season in context, only 4 players in American League history had ever hit 40 or more home runs while batting above 350 in the same year. Those 4 players were Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Jimmy Fox, and Mickey Mantle. Norm Cash joined that list in 1961, and almost no one noticed, because 1961 was also the year Roger Maris hit 61 home runs. The entire country was watching Maris and Mantle chase Babe Ruth's record. The greatest hitting season of Cash's life unfolded in the shadow of a home run race that consumed all the oxygen in baseball. Here is what almost no one remembers. That same year, Cash and his Detroit teammate Rocky Colavito together drove in more runs than Maris and Mantle combined. The Tigers won 101 games and still finished 8 games behind the Yankees. Cash finished 4th in the most valuable player voting. He told reporters, "It was a freak. Even at the time, I realized that. Everything I hit seemed to drop in, even when I did not make good contact. I never thought I would do it again." In 1981, a writer from Sports Illustrated sat down with Norm Cash and asked him about 1961. Cash leaned back, smiled. He told the writer that he had used a hollow bat. He had drilled a hole in the handle, packed it with those materials, and sealed it back up. The technique had been taught to him years earlier in the minor leagues. He had used it throughout that famous season and in other seasons as well. The American League chose not to investigate. Cash was never punished, never stripped of his batting title, never suspended for a single game. What followed, though, was its own form of consequence. The 118-point drop in his batting average the following season. From 361 down to 243 remains the largest single-season decline ever recorded by a pros, defending batting champion in Major League history. Detroit fans, who had expected Cash to keep hitting that way, began to boo him. They felt cheated. They felt he was not trying. They could not understand why the man who had seemed unstoppable in 1961 now looked ordinary. Cash had a sharp answer for that too. Pitcher Mickey Lolich once asked him directly, why did he never hit for a high average again after that season? Cash replied, Jim Campbell pays me to hit home runs. Campbell was the Tigers' general manager. Then Cash added, because Cash always added something, I can get hits if I want to, just watch tomorrow. The next day, he went 3 for 4. Here is the twist that researchers discovered decades later. Studies conducted long after Cash retired found that a corked bat provides almost no measurable physical advantage. The ball does not travel further. The swing speed improvement is minimal at best. What a corked bat actually provides is a psychological boost, the feeling of lightness and confidence in a hitter's hands. In other words, what made Norm Cash's bat special in 1961 may have been something he already carried inside him. The cork was a prop. The belief was real. He paid for that belief for the rest of his career in Detroit, booed by fans who never stopped expecting 1961 to return. There is a moment that Jim Northrup, Cash's teammate for many years, liked to tell. It happened during a rain delay. Play had stopped, the tarp was on the infield, and both teams were waiting. When the game resumed, Cash, who had been standing on first base before the delay, quietly took a few steps towards second base and stayed there. He had simply moved himself up a base while nobody was watching. Northrup said, if Norman was on second before the rain delay, he would go to third. If he was on first, he would go to second. Nobody caught him. Nobody seemed to know quite how to handle it. And Cash stood there with the expression of a man who had no idea what anyone could possibly be upset about. That was Norm Cash. Al Kaline, who kept his locker directly next to Cash's for many years, once described his teammate this way. When you mention Norm Cash, I just smile. He was just a fun guy to be around and a great teammate. He always came ready to play. People do not know this, but he often played injured, like the time he had a broken finger. The pranks were constant and the humor was never mean. One afternoon, Cash missed a foul ball that landed in the stands. He walked over, turned a young fan's cap backward on his head, reached into the boy's box of popcorn, took a handful, and said, thanks, kid, as the boy looked up at him in complete bewilderment. Once, caught in a rundown and about to be tagged out, Cash stopped dead, raised both hands, and formed a T shape with his fingers to call time out, as if that were something a base runner was allowed to do. The Tigers fan club voted him King Tiger in 1969, not for his statistics, but for who he was. And in the 1968 World Series, when Detroit fell behind 3-1 against the Street Louis Cardinals, it was Cash who stood up in the clubhouse and told his teammates, we have got them right where we want them. The year 1968 was one of the darkest in American history. Martin Luther King had been shot in April. Robert Kennedy had been shot in June. American cities had burned through the summer. Detroit itself had seen devastating riots the year before, leaving whole neighborhoods in ash. The country felt like it was tearing apart. And then October arrived, and the Detroit Tigers gave the city something to hold on to. The Tigers had won 103 games that season. Their ace, Denny McLain, had won 31, a number no pitcher had reached in over 30 years. They were going to the World Series against the St. Louis Cardinals, led by Bob Gibson. And Gibson in 1968 was something close to unhittable. But before October, Cash had his own private crisis to resolve. On July 27th, he was hitting 195, barely above his own weight. A slugger on the best team in baseball, producing almost nothing. Then something shifted. Over his final 54 games of the regular season, Cash hit 333 with 12 home runs. He arrived at the World Series a different hitter than the one who had been struggling in July. Game 1 proved it was not enough, at least not against Bob Gibson. Gibson struck out 17 Tigers in a single game, setting a World Series record that still stands. Norm Cash was his 16th victim, the strikeout that broke the record. Cash walked back to the dugout having just been made part of history in the least flattering way imaginable. The Tigers lost Game 1, they lost Game 4 as well. Down 3-1, facing elimination, needing to win 3 straight against a team that had Bob Gibson waiting for Game 7. Before practice the day before Game 7, manager Mayo Smith stood in front of his players and said, "Gibson can be beaten. He is not Superman." Norm Cash looked up and said, "Well, I saw him changing in a phone booth a little while ago." The room broke up laughing. Game 7 was scoreless through 6 innings. Gibson and Mickey Lolich, pitching on 2 days of rest, matched each other 0 for 0 while the tension in Busch Stadium grew unbearable. Then came the 7th inning. 2 outs, nobody on base. Cash stepped in against the same man who had made him strike out number 16 6 days earlier and singled cleanly into the outfield. Willie Horton followed with another single. Jim Northrup drove a ball deep to center. Cardinals outfielder Curt Flood misjudged it, took 1 step in, then turned and ran. The ball one-hopped the warning track, 2 runs scored. Cash was the first Tiger to cross home plate. Final score, 4-1. Detroit Tigers world champions for the first time since 1945. Cash hit 385 across that entire World Series. The man who was strikeout number 16 in Game 1 started the winning rally in Game 7. After 1968, Cash kept playing. He hit 20 or more home runs every season from 1961 through 1969. He made the All-Star team 4 times. He won Comeback Player of the Year twice. He held career defensive records at first base for the Detroit franchise that had been set by legends like Hank Greenberg and Rudy York, and he broke them both. But the end, when it came, arrived without ceremony. On August 7th, 1974, the telephone in the clubhouse rang. It was Jim Campbell, the general manager. Cash was hitting 228 in 53 games. Campbell told him not to come to the park anymore. Not a meeting in the office, not a conversation face-to-face, a telephone call. Cash said afterward, "I thought at least they would let me finish out the year." Campbell just called and said I did not have to show up at the park. He was 51 years old and had played 15 seasons as a Detroit Tiger. After baseball, Cash moved to broadcasting. He joined ABC as a color commentator for national telecasts in 1976, working alongside Bob Gibson. The partnership had a certain poetry to it, but Cash's humor did not always translate to a national audience. He told viewers on one broadcast that the most exciting thing to do in Baltimore was to go down to the street and watch hubcaps rust. The network released him shortly after. Then in 1978, he suffered a stroke that caused partial facial paralysis and ended his ability to speak clearly on the air. The man who had always had the right line for every moment lost the ability to deliver it. On October 11th, 1986, Cash took his cabin cruiser out to Beaver Island in northern Lake Michigan. The boat was named Stormin' Norman. He had dinner with his wife Dorothy, drank 4 vodka tonics over 2 hours. The bartender at the Shamrock Bar said he did not appear unsteady, then walked out alone in the dark to check on his boat. He was wearing cowboy boots from Texas. The dock was wet. He slipped, hit his head, and fell into the water. His body was found the following morning, floating in 15 feet of water in Street James Bay. Norm Cash spent his career being overlooked, traded for a man who played 4 games, overshadowed by Roger Maris in the greatest season of his life, booed in his home ballpark by fans who could not forgive him for an extraordinary year he could not repeat, released over the telephone after 15 seasons, never inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. And yet, Cash and 8 teammates played together for 10 consecutive seasons in Detroit from 1964 through 1973. That is a major league record that the free agent era has made nearly impossible to break. Al Kaline, one of the finest players of his generation, said that every time someone mentioned Norm Cash, he smiled. Not because of any statistic, because of what it felt like to share a clubhouse with him for a decade. The numbers, for those who care, hold up. Cash's career offensive rating was higher than 2 first basemen later inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. He received fewer than 2 votes out of every 100 on his only ballot appearance. He singled off the greatest pitcher in the game to start the rally that made Detroit champions. Norm Cash was not the most famous Tiger. He was never enshrined in Cooperstown, but in Detroit, when his name comes up, people smile. That is what Stormin' Norman left behind.